That quiet old man. That folksy grandpa from Omaha who cracks gentle jokes about compound interest and loves his cherry Coke. That financial Buddha who tells you the secret to wealth is to buy index funds and never panic. He is the ultimate, meticulously crafted lie. You've read the books, you've watched the interviews, and you've absorbed the official, aggressively boring narrative, value investing. They tell you the $100 billion fortune, a number so vast it redefines the very concept of wealth, was built on a simple philosophy: buy great companies at a fair price and be patient. And that, my friends, is the silk scarf the magician waves to distract you. It's the elegant beige packaging for a financial weapon of mass acquisition. If the secret to acquiring wealth to rival the GDP of small nations was simply buy low, sell high, then every diligent MBA student and every guy who read Benjamin Graham, The Intelligent Investor, would be swimming in gold coins right now. They aren't. They're still showing up to work. The difference between a smart investor and Warren Buffett isn't a percentage point in their return. It's the distance between the Earth and the nearest black hole. It's an exponential, mind-bending gap that cannot be explained by checking the price-to-earnings ratio. To understand the true $100 billion secret, we must first accept the terrifying truth. The public story is a calculated sham. The lie of the foundation. From academic truth to corporate cover. The official origin story begins with young Warren, a certified math prodigy hustling for nickels and dimes, proving his work ethic. This is the baseline, the participation trophy of success. Every successful person works hard. That's not the secret. The second part of the lie is Benjamin Graham's value investing. Buffett, a spiritual guru, taught him to look for the margin of safety, buying a dollar bill for 50 cents and to ignore Mr. Market's manic depressive mood swings. This philosophy demands two things: painstaking analysis and the psychological fortitude of a granite statue. But stop and consider the absurdity. Graham's strategy relies on the hyper-efficient, algorithm-driven global market repeatedly missing a simple math problem. If a great company is priced for oblivion, the market likely knows a disaster is looming. The fact that the Oracle's foundational secret is relying on the collective stupidity of the world has financial apparatus is the first sign we're being fed a line. Value investing is not the secret. It's the solid, respectable, low-volatility foundation that provided the perfect, boring cover story. It gave him the psychological discipline to operate in the early years. But the money-printing skyscraper built on top of that slab was fueled by something far more cynical and ruthlessly effective. He needed to acquire the right to be patient, and he did it with a blend of chaos and vengeance. The chaos in the spite purchase. Before he was the Oracle, he was the kid. A chaotic financial Dagon running investment partnerships with money scraped from Omaha dentists and grandmas. The fee structure was pure arrogance. He took a 25% cut of everything over a minimal 6% return. It was a heads I win, tails I break even scenario, an audacious structure that demanded high returns. The kid wasn't buying safe blue chips. He was a financial scavenger, hunting statistical arbitrage betting on the scrap value of defunct zinc smelters and messy corporate liquidations. He took over the Sanborn Map Company and Dempster Mill Manufacturing, not out of love for maps or farm equipment, but to force management changes and extract every last dime. This was corporate wrestling, high stakes and messy. He was in the trenches, running businesses, not passively holding stocks. But the ultimate chaotic emotional move, the one that launched the empire, was the acquisition of Berkshire Hathaway. This company, a dying New England textile mill, was a certified financial disaster. In 1964, after he had agreed to sell his shares back to management for $11.50, the CEO, Seabury Stanton, spitefully lowballed him by 12.5 cents per share. That fractional difference became the spark for a $100 billion act of rage. Incandescent with fury over the insult, Buffett changed his plan. He didn't sell, he bought. He bought up every single share until he controlled the entire company, solely so he could fire Seabury Stanton. The foundation of the global financial fortress is a morbid monument to a petty, vindictive argument over a handful of change. The textile business was a black hole, a massive, ongoing drag that he eventually shut down. But the corporate shell, the name Berkshire Hathaway, remained. The money he lost trying to save the mill was the cheapest tuition he ever paid. It taught him the brutal nature of a bad business, and, Crucially, it gave him the corporate structure, the vehicle he needed for the real engine, zero-cost capital. The true engine, the float, the ultimate cheat code. Forget the stock-picking genius. The real, irrefutable $100 billion secret is called the float. The float comes from one place: insurance. When you pay your auto or homeowner's insurance premium, you give that money to the company today. They promise to hold it, just in case your house burns down years from now. That money, sitting in their accounts between the time you pay and the time they pay a claim, if they ever do, is the float. It's a massive, temporary, interest-free loan that grows every single day. When Buffett aggressively acquired insurance giants like Geico and various reinsurance firms, he wasn't buying them for their underwriting skills. He was buying their float production capacity. He essentially bought the faucet that pours free money into his investment account every morning. This float has easily swelled, at times, to over $150 billion, a war chest of capital rivaling the GDP of entire mid-sized nations, all sitting there waiting free of charge. And here's the genius of the scam. Because his companies are so good at predicting risk, they often run an underwriting profit. This means the money they take in from premiums is more than the money they pay out in claims and operating costs. He isn't just getting the use of that $150 billion for free. He's essentially being paid to hold and invest it. The cost of his capital is literally negative. Think of the implication: when you or I buy a massive block of shares, we have to borrow money and pay interest, eating into our returns. Buffett uses the float. He pays zero interest. When he makes a 12% return, he keeps the entire 12%. That differential, compounded over 6 decades across tens of billions of dollars, is the silent, invisible, absolutely monstrous engine of his fortune. He is playing a game of corporate conquest with chips that cost him nothing, against opponents who had to take out a subprime loan just to get to the table. He eliminated the most fundamental problem in finance: the cost of capital. The moat in action. Weaponizing human weakness with the float providing the free fuel. Buffett needed a strategy to deploy it. That strategy is defined by the moat, a concept he makes sound noble, but which is ultimately a cynical understanding of human weakness and universal addiction. He didn't buy dynamic businesses. He bought companies that have a near-religious hold over billions of people's daily habits. The ultimate example is Coca-Cola. He didn't bet on their distribution network. He bet on sugar addiction and the universal Pavlovian response to a bubbly, hyper-sweet brown liquid. He purchased a perpetual inflation-proof tax on human refreshment. The moat isn't built on patents. It's built on the unwavering collective habit of billions. The same cynical lens applies everywhere. Seize candies? He bought a tax on guilt and sentimentality. People buy it on autopilot for holidays. His railroads and utilities, government-sanctioned monopolies. He bought a tax on infrastructure dependency. The moat is simply a poetic way of saying predictable, automated cash flow sourced from universal, non-negotiable demand. But even the moat requires time to work, which brings us to the second most infuriating part of the deployment strategy: inaction. The vast, overwhelming majority of his fortune, over 99% of his billions, was accumulated after his 50th birthday. The world of finance screams at you to do something. It demands action, generating fees and volatility. Buffett's strategy of inaction is a deliberate act of market defiance. He commits to a profound public valve stillness. He buys American Express during a massive scandal and then forgets it exists for 30 years, letting the terrifying non-linear magic of compounding do its slow, deliberate alchemy. His stoicism isn't just a personal virtue, it's a leveraged advantage. When the market crashes, the retail investor panics and sells. Buffett, funded by the stable zero-cost float, is not trading. He is shopping. He is weaponizing the fear of the masses. His success is an inverted testament to the fact that in investing, your biggest enemy is often your own twitchy, impulsive fingers. He created a system that requires him to be a genius just once when he buys the stock and then rewards him for the next 50 years for being lazy. The two-man wrecking crew. Munger's ruthless intellect, the entire solo act narrative, is another lie. The wealth machine wasn't built by one man, but by a terrifying two-person wrecking crew, with the Oracle acting as the charismatic face and his longtime partner Charlie Munger, acting as the ruthless, unsentimental operator. If Buffett is the smiling, public face of American financial optimism, Munger was the grumpy, hyper-intelligent skeptic. It was Munger who grabbed Buffett by the lapels and forced him to abandon the pursuit of fair businesses at wonderful prices, the old Graham-era cigar butts, and evolved to buy wonderful businesses at a fair price, the moat strategy. That pivot is the $90 billion inflection point. Munger's influence is the key to Berkshire's unforgiving nature. He filters Buffett's expansive ideas through his brutal, inverted intellectual framework, obsessively searching for all the ways an investment could fail, and then simply avoiding them. Munger didn't need the fame. He only needed the intellectual satisfaction of being right, ensuring that the precious, zero-cost capital was only deployed into situations with massive, self-reinforcing competitive advantages. The two were a masterpiece of corporate synergy. Buffett handled the external world, the brand maintenance and the raising of the float. Munger handled the internal world, the intellectual discipline, and the avoidance of catastrophic error. The secret is the powerful, wealth-compounding friction generated by two brilliantly cynical minds working in perfect, unspoken harmony. The power play. The tax on global distress, the final, most audacious leap in wealth, came not from stock picking, but from the most brutal form of corporate conquest, the private deals. This is when Warren Buffett went from being a mere investor to the financial equivalent of a benevolent yet utterly ruthless god of capital, the ultimate lender of last resort. The ultimate power flex isn't buying a stock on the open market. It's being the only phone number on the speed dial of every panicked CEO when the entire financial airplane is on fire. Because his capital fueled by the float is the most stable, most trusted money in the world, he gets terms that no one else can command. He charges an exorbitant, non-negotiable tax on global distress. The most spectacular example came during the 2008 financial crisis with Goldman Sachs. When Goldman was facing an existential crisis of confidence, they called Omaha. Buffett stepped in, investing $5 billion not for common stock, but for preferred stock that guaranteed him an immediate, risk-free 10% annual dividend, an immediate $500 million payout every year. He also received warrants a free lottery ticket on the company's recovery. He charged them a monopoly price for his stable capital and his psychological stamp of approval. His investment didn't just shore up Goldman's balance sheet. It sent a massive signal to the entire global market. If Warren Buffett is buying, things can't be that bad. He charged a king's ransom for that confidence, proving that the system is designed to reward the man who is best prepared to capitalize on the despair of others. The final irony, the beautiful mistakes, and the reluctant surrender, the oracle isn't infallible. He has made gigantic, embarrassing, and occasionally bankrupting blunders. Take Dexter Shoe in 1993, which he bought for over $400 million, paying with highly appreciated Berkshire Hathaway stock. The shoe business immediately collapsed, but the stock he traded for it compounded into billions. It was a catastrophic misallocation of his most precious resource, a multi-billion-dollar blunder that he admits was one of his worst decisions. Then there's the recurring, agonizing failure of the airline industry. He bought in, lost money, famously called the industry a death trap, sold out, bought back in 2 decades later, and then panic sold all of his massive airline holdings during the 2020 pandemic crash. The beautiful irony is that his failures prove the real secret isn't infallibility. It's the asymmetry of the winners. His compounding machine, fueled by the float, is so massive that the losses are mathematically insignificant. A few Dexter Shoe failures don't matter when your Coca-Cola gains are the size of the Empire State Building. The final violation of his own principles came with the Apple trade. For 60 years, he had preached, stick to what you know, and shunned volatile tech. But the returns from his traditional moat companies were slowing down. To maintain the hyperbolic narrative of the $100 billion fortune, he was forced to find a new source of exponential growth. He reluctantly surrendered to the digital age, buying a massive stake in Apple, justifying it with a brilliant PR spin. He wasn't buying a tech company. He was buying a consumer staple, a psychological lock-in. It was a reluctant acknowledgement that the biggest moats of the 21st century are built on network effects and psychological dominance delivered through a handheld device. He was backed into a corner by the sheer, overwhelming returns of the modern economy, and had to hire younger managers to execute the trade. The unattainable secret we have reached, the brutal, final twist. The secret is absolutely, aggressively boring. yet utterly unattainable for the average human being. The revealed formula is a combination of three utterly unsexy, psychologically punishing, and profoundly unmarketable behaviors that no one in the Degen world has the stomach for. 1. Structural advantage: the float. You cannot replicate this zero-cost capital. Your money fights financial friction. His does not. 2. The time multiplier. You cannot guarantee the longevity and health required to run the compounding curve past the point of human comprehension. 3. Extreme self-control. You lack the necessary psychological stillness and discipline to resist market panic, market greed, and the urge to spend the money. The final, bitter, maddening irony is this: the secret isn't hidden. It's profoundly undesirable. The oracle became the oracle by choosing the path that every other human being finds too slow, too boring, and too psychologically taxing to follow. The mystery is solved, but the execution remains impossible. The secret is safe, not behind locked doors, but behind a barrier of financial structure and inhuman discipline that renders it utterly unattainable to the common man. The entire spectacle was necessary just to prove that the simple answer is the right one, provided you can stick with it for 70 years.